Well, howdy there, peepos. Man, so yesterday, the Nintendo Direct for the Switch 2 happened, and I'm extremely disappointed, to say the least. Yesterday, they announced the Switch 2 officially, and we've got some crazy shit to talk about, because this thing, trying to be compared to any other gaming system in the industry right now, I just don't see the benefit of a Switch 2. And I certainly don't think that the Switch 2 is going to be as much of a hit in our current age. Let me just say, I was not shocked by the Switch 2 announcement yesterday. Nothing about the announcement made me feel like this is an improvement over any of the current systems that we have. I don't even think it's really a big improvement over the original Switch. Yes, does it have 60 frames per second at 4K? Absolutely. Does it have 120 frames a second for 1080p? Yes. Is that something that's amazing in our day-to-day world with the Steam Decks and things that we have available to us? No, it's not that impressive. I don't think that the announcement of the Switch 2 means anything in the current state. I honestly think that it was a big smack in the face for most consumers, because consumers are already having a struggle purchasing systems, and having a system that costs almost as much as a PS5 and as it costs more than an Xbox Series S. I would be more likely to recommend those systems to somebody than I would be the Nintendo system, on top of the fact that Xbox and PS5 have deals with their games, and they're not charging $80 or $90 per game. I just think that that's ridiculous. According to Nintendo, a bunch of these games that they're going to be releasing are going to be $80 for the software versions, and they're going to be $90 for the physical versions. I just don't think that that's a viable option as a consumer. Most people don't have $100 that they can set to the side for a game, especially not one from Nintendo. It's not like the Nintendo games coming out are freaking cyberpunk level games. They're not these crazy state-of-the-art games. It's Nintendo games. They're Mario Kart, they're Donkey Kong Country, they're Metroid Prime. And I just don't think that those are games that are worth $80, $90 a pop. And especially not for the whole course of this Switch 2. As we know, Nintendo does not ever like to change their prices. To me, I just feel like Steam Decks are so much more advantageous than the Switch 2. I think that there's so much more benefit to having a Steam Deck over a Switch 2. It's just retarded. I was seeing some footage of these guys. They were playing Cyberpunk 2077 on the Switch 2, and I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed. I'm not thrilled by the release of the Switch 2. I think that it's just stupid. And some of the games that they had yesterday were also just really ridiculous and really a big slap in the face. They had this game that was a wheelchair basketball game, and all I could think the whole time, using the new mouse features of the Switch controllers, which to me I don't think that the mouse feature on those controllers is going to be worth very much. I don't know what they're going to do with that feature, and if it's even worthwhile at that. Obviously, there were some cool things with it. Yes, it has Hall effect sticks, which is great, because that means that hopefully we're not going to have these broken sticks all the time. And it also has the little magnetic attachments on the Joy-Cons, which is pretty neat as well. But I just, again, like I said, compared to something like a Steam Deck at the same price range, I don't see a benefit to it. And especially because when you buy a Steam Deck, if you're playing third-party games, right? Like if you're not just playing Nintendo games and you want to enjoy other titles like Cyberpunk, for example, or Elden Ring, or a bunch of other indie games that are available on Steam that you might not have access to, Steam has deals all the time. Nintendo has deals sometimes, and they're not great, and it's never for their own titles. Most of the time for other third-party titles. So the Switch 2 is a definite no from me. I think I don't see the benefit. I think that they're pushing for a price tag that is overwhelmingly stupid. And just to give you an idea of how overwhelmingly stupid I think this price tag is, on average, it takes a game studio, AAA game studio, anywhere from $50 million to $100 million to put together a game. And let's say, and 100 developers. So if you have 100 developers, well, actually, sorry, not 100 developers, about 100 people in total, developers, artists, programmers, in total, that's what typically the entire team involves. And of course, you're going to have some voice actors and whatever for their game as well. But what I find really interesting about this is that even with all that taken into account, they're screwing their consumer base over. With all things considered, if you sell about 7 million copies of a game, which is very, very ungenerous when we're talking about consumer sales, 7 million isn't a great hit of a game. Even then, you're well into profit on just the cost alone if you're selling it for $60 a game, which it doesn't cost that much, by the way. So now you're taking in licensing costs. So even charging a game at $60 a copy is way expensive. Way expensive. There's no reason to do it that way. Anyway, needless to say that yesterday was a letdown for a lot of people. It's totally turning people away from being able to step into the ecosystem of Nintendo. It's definitely not allowing a lot of people to get into that ecosystem. Most people, I think, are going to say, why is the Switch 2 any better than my Switch? It's retarded. I think that $450 price range is potentially a good price range for the system. I don't think that an $80 copy for a game or a $90 copy for a game is an entry point for anybody. That makes gaming a luxury. And if we're making gaming a luxury, then I'm going to prioritize people that do not make gaming as a luxury. Look at Steam. None of those guys prioritize gaming as a luxury. I get to buy those games at a price that I believe is reasonable. On Steam, when they have a deal happen or something gets on my wish list, it gets down to the price that I'm willing to pay for it. I pay it then. Nintendo doesn't do that. And Nintendo's competing with Steam OS. And we know that there's going to be some better Steam Decks coming out this year. We got the Legion Go 2, which is going to be coming out. And we know that the hardware on that is going to be fantastic. If you look at the Legion Go S, the hardware and software on that is fantastic. They've made the UIs so clean and so beautiful and efficient. I just don't see Nintendo getting very far with these prices. And for me, it's a no. I'm not going to buy a Switch 2 over a Steam Deck. There's nothing about it that's interesting to me. The only reason I would ever get a Switch 2 is if I really cared so much about the Mario Kart games and all the Nintendo exclusives. But the problem is, as a normal consumer, those exclusives in my mind are not worth $80 or $90. They're not. And I don't think to most people that they're worth $80 or $90. I would be mad paying $50 for a game. I'm pissed when I have to pay $70 for a game. I don't think that $70 per copy is a reasonable price to pay. So I'm certainly not thinking $80 is reasonable. Anyway, that's my opinion. That's my take. I want to know what you guys think of this, because it's really frustrating. I don't like the Nintendo ecosystem as it is, and I'm certainly not liking how greedy Nintendo is pitching themselves to be at the moment. Hopefully they figure this out and realize that their consumer base is not going to be happy about it, and that they're not going to be selling as many Switch 2s as they're going to be able. I mean, they have real competition now. Steam Decks are real competition for Nintendo. The only reason the Switch was operating as effectively as it was because the Switch was like the first thing on the market that was like what it was. Steam Decks evolved really from the Switch's existence. And now we have Steam Decks, and I just think, yeah, I mean, Nintendo is competing with Steam Decks. So if they really want to make competition and exceed their competition, if they want to do better than their competitors, they're going to have to do better than the Steam Deck. And I just think that that's, for them, means a lot of sacrifice. The reason I think that the Steam Deck is such an incredible competitor for the Switch is because if you are a Steam user, I'm a frequent Steam user. I buy games on Steam all the time. They stick up a lot for their consumers, and they don't allow, like just recently, they've been putting policies in place that are really bad towards companies that are taking advantage of consumers. You know, they're targeting companies now that are trying to sell a product that doesn't actually have a launch. And I think that that's really good for people, because you don't want to buy a game that doesn't have any promises of becoming anything. You know, for many years, I've believed that Nintendo was a quality developer. I think that the Switch was absolutely a game changer in the ecosystem, which is why so many people bought into it. They saw the potential in it. But now that Steam Decks are around, I think that Steam Decks built on that potential that Nintendo brought. And so if Nintendo wants to succeed, they're going to need to build an ecosystem that is somehow better than the Steam Deck ecosystem. And I don't know if that's something that's realistic for Nintendo unless they start to adapt their ecosystem into the one that exists, which we know Nintendo being this exclusive ecosystem all the time. All of their systems have always been an exclusive ecosystem. I don't know if they're going to do that. It's just going to be a matter of time before we start seeing Nintendo do these things. And I don't know how reasonable that is. I also just wasn't surprised or shocked by a lot of the things that Nintendo showed in their Nintendo Direct yesterday. A lot of the games to me seemed very mid. I also did not think that the charging for upgrades for upgraded visuals on a game is the most greedy thing that a business could do. I really do think it is. If you build a game, I want to put it this way. I explained it to somebody recently where imagine you buy a cheap PC. It doesn't have a whole lot of oomph, but you can play your games on it on low quality. And let's say you buy Cyberpunk 2077. So you purchase 2077, you play it, you have to set all the settings low and it kind of looks like shit, but at least you get to play the game on this crappy computer. So you play it on its thing and then you decide, hey, I'm going to upgrade my computer. I'm going to spend the money to upgrade my computer so that I can play 2077 in perfect graphic fidelity with all of these new settings and things that are there. So that's what you do. Maybe you buy a new graphics card and you install it on your computer. And once you've installed it on your computer, you go to play 2077, but as you pop open 2077, it's like 2077 goes, hey, you need to pay us so that you can see these graphical settings improvements on your system. Imagine how much of a slap in the face that would be if every time you opened up any game that you've purchased and you go, oh shit, I bought the base game. Now I can't even play it in my full graphic fidelity. I have to pay $10 to see the upgraded visuals. It's not okay. And it's not something we want to normalize as a consumer. So my thoughts are this. None of the upgrades on the games that they have available, you should not be charging $10 for an upgraded visuals on a game because there's nothing that they are already doing as developers that's changing the game aside from the settings in that game. The only time I would expect a upgrade to actually be worth buying is if it really did require a ton of work to get that thing to work on a system. But I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it straight up. Tears of the Kingdom, Super Mario Odyssey, none of those are things that Nintendo developed where they had to spend a whole bunch on trying to get those resources to work well on the Nintendo Switch 2 system. They didn't. All they did is change the settings on there. Most people can emulate Switch games better than they ever played on the Switch. And I guarantee you when these upgrades come out on the Switch 2, they were probably better emulated on a computer system than they will ever be in the upgrade. Nintendo knows what it can get away with. It's always known what it can get away with as its ecosystem because what it markets is its ecosystem to its consumers. The other thing that really bugged me yesterday was, the way that they pitched certain things as if they're these new state-of-the-art things. They tried to pitch their new chat features as this new state-of-the-art, oh my gosh, you can buy this camera and display your face while you're playing games. Oh my gosh, you can actually join chat party and talk to people. As if Discord doesn't exist. The way they pitched it was as if they had these ideas and created them on their own. When people don't want to use the software, it's another piece of software for an individual to use. Most people, Discord is plenty fine. Discord is one of the best chat platforms, the best communication platforms for gaming that exists out there. And for Nintendo not to incorporate that on their system and instead build something native to their system is a waste in my mind. Nobody's going to prefer it. And then also to pitch it, I still, like I said, what really bothers me is the fact that they tried to pitch this as a new state-of-the-art thing for Nintendo. And it's like, dude, this thing's been around, chat has been around for a decade or more now. You know what I mean? We've had these platforms for a long time. And to just now be incorporating them into their Switch 2 and not incorporate these features into something like the Switch, which they should have done a long time. Chat should have been something that implemented in their previous system. Not in the Switch 2. Why are we implementing this now? It doesn't make sense, except from a greedy corporate standpoint and trying to profit as much as they can off a new system that should have been in place. So yeah, I think that those are my initial thoughts at the moment. I'm not very happy with the Switch 2 ecosystem. I'm not happy with the way that they're treating their consumer. I think that they're trying to make their ecosystem a luxury that isn't a luxury. They're trying to pitch their Switch 2 as something that's revolutionary and new because it's got 60 frames a second on 4K and 120 frames a second on 1080p. And, a year from now, it's going to mean nothing because when Steam Decks come out later this year that are far better than the Switch 2, nobody's going to want the Switch 2. I think that Steam OS has so much more potential than Nintendo does from a consumer standpoint, from a money standpoint, from somebody who's hurting in the economy at the moment and doesn't have money to just throw at something. Most people don't have a bunch of money to throw at something right now. So my thoughts, Switch needs to adapt their ecosystem. They need to pay attention to the economy. They need to pay attention to what's the actual cost of something, not how much can we squeeze out of people. It's been like that forever. The fact that none of their native titles are ever discounted, that's a problem. I shouldn't be paying $60 for Mario Kart. That just shouldn't be happening. Anyway, I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are on this whole situation. If you guys are upset about it, if you guys think it's a great system and I'm just pooping on it and trying to say that it's a terrible thing. I don't know. I'm looking at this from a consumer without a whole lot of money and thinking, man, I feel excluded from the ecosystem of Nintendo. Or not even just excluded, but I feel like Nintendo is trying to build an ecosystem from an ecosystem that already exists in the Steam platform. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about it, and I'll respond to you guys later. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.